welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Very glad that you're able to spend some time with us here as we get you into your work week. And boy, the topic of conversation around the water coolers today and in the elevators, and I would imagine standing at the end of your desk is the talk of the storm that's coming, right? Boy, it was interesting to be waiting to get up into the ninth floor here at Young Tower, and there's usually quite a cluster of people that are out front of the elevators waiting to go to work, and you can't help but listen to the conversation, and the conversation was about the impending storm. The calm before the storm this morning, though, my goodness, right? That beautiful sunrise this morning, but does the saying hold true? Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. It was a beautiful sunrise and a very lovely drive in this morning. It was fairly light, at least my commute was. I know that some of you commuting across the bridge had a little bit more worrisome debate or drive-in commute today than I did. So, but it looks like we're going to have a little bit of dry weather at least to begin the day, but that's not the way the day is going to end. Listening to the forecast this morning and reading the stories on our website at halifax.citynews.ca, it appears that this first major late fall, we can't even call it winter yet because we're not at the 21st, but this late fall storm that is coming is going to be essentially a rain event for much of the urban areas here in HRM. Now, there has been a lot of talk about a lot of snow and snow-rain mix and all of that stuff. So we're going to bring Allister on here, our weather specialist, Allister Aalders, in just a couple of moments' time. And we'll get the very latest on this. But it looks, at least at this point, that those in the urban areas of HRM and very close surrounding areas are going to see maybe a little bit of snow to begin, and then that switching over to rain very quickly. The temperature is supposed to rise well above zero tonight here, so that's going to keep the rain through the day. I'm thinking that the forecast is calling somewhere up to 50 millimeters of rain before all is said and done. Now, the same cannot be said for those that are living further west of us. That's where this cold Arctic flow is coming down from the north, and that's going to change the precipitation over from rain to snow. I'm looking at some forecast amounts here for places like in Cumberland and Colchester counties, and some of the counties up in Cape Breton, and even into the Annapolis Valley and down along the Fundy Coast to Digby, looking anywhere from 15 to 25 or even more centimeters of snow. So I don't want to sort of prejudge things, and I don't want to suggest that maybe tomorrow might be the first official snow day of the year for some, but it certainly doesn't look that way for HRM. But anyway, I'll leave the forecasting to the experts, and I'll bring Allister on here very shortly, and we'll get the very latest on the modeling as it goes along. It's interesting. We're getting a chance to see the new Environment Canada color coding as part of this storm. If you saw the stories last week, Environment Canada is changing the way that they alert people when it comes to these weather events. It's going into a color code system. We're going to see yellow, orange, or red, and the current color code on parts of Nova Scotia in the Annapolis Valley and into parts of Cape Breton and into Cumberland and Colchester counties in the regular areas. You know what I'm talking about. Mount Tom and the Cobequid Pass. That's at a yellow alert level this morning. Will it change? Maybe. Will we see orange? We could. But right now it's currently at a yellow warning level. Well, after a vigorous debate, I think I can call it, on the show yesterday surrounding the assessment cap, still got a lot of emails from you all yesterday, and good conversation, and I hope that that conversation can continue today, because City Council will debate that today, and if this is a fair and equitable way to tax people, essentially. What's at stake here is that assessment cap. Now, we know that it's not a City Council decision to remove the cap. That was put on by the province. I think it was 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And this would be a staff report, so it certainly isn't going to happen today. And but it's going to come back to council, and then if council would adopt the recommendations or whatever happens there, then of course they would have to again ask the province to make a change. And to be quite honest, I would be very surprised if the Premier has an appetite to do that based on some of the calls that I took yesterday. So you may want to continue that debate. I heard an awful lot of people that thought I was out to lunch in my assessment of the whole thing yesterday. Didn't hear a lot of people that agreed with me, which is, it's fine. That's what we do here, right? And maybe that might be something you want to talk about. We're going to open up the telephone lines after 11 o'clock today to the open hour. So if you want to have a continued conversation on that, that certainly is something that we'll look forward to. Also, I don't know if you saw this. It kind of got lost in some of the other news that came out of a big a rally or I don't even know what you want to call it, maybe a party convention in Alberta over the weekend. That was where Premier Danielle Smith stood up in front of her base and laid out some of the things that were going on. Maybe can you call it a lukewarm reception to her being less frigid with the federal government in Ottawa? Apparently there were some cheers and there were some groans and maybe even a boo or two. But that is what she said, that the federal government is starting to work with Alberta. But one of the things that caught my attention, and from that meeting on the weekend, is Premier Smith wants to take a look at instituting a castle law. Now, for those of you who don't know what a castle law is, that would give a homeowner the right, enshrined in law, to protect their property. This, of course, has come back to the surface after earlier this summer. I think it was in Lindsay, Ontario. Somebody broke into a house and the homeowner confronted said invader and beat him up and got charged with assault. So Premier Smith is now considering instituting a law in Alberta that would protect a homeowner from a situation like that, from using excessive force and even lethal force to protect their property. I'm curious as to what the feeling in Nova Scotia is on that. I hear a lot of bluster from people saying, somebody comes to my house, they're going to leave in a bag. Well, it's easy to say that, but is that something that we should enshrine into the law of Nova Scotia? Might be something you want to talk about during the open hour today. We're going to take a break here. We're going to get our first break done, and then we're going to welcome our, almost called him a meteorologist, almost jumped the gun. He's only a couple more weeks to go. He's almost there. He's our weather specialist, and that's Allister Aalders, and he's going to join us with the very latest on this impending weather. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. Happy Tuesday. We're back after the break. I know we talk about the weather a lot here. Almost said leather. We talk about the weather a lot here on the program, but this is of course December, and this is truly the first real almost winter storm. Can't call it a winter storm yet because we're not in winter, but it is that time of the year, and that conversation or those conversations I overheard getting ready to climb up the elevator today were cause for concern to me because there has been a lot of stuff talked about with this storm, and a lot of things have changed over the last 4 or 5 days. So I thought it would be appropriate for us to welcome back. I know we talked to him yesterday, and pretty soon Allister's going to charge me overtime for being on the show. With that being said, Allister, let's start with the definition. Is this a true nor'easter by definition?
Well, I mean, technically, yes. I think what we need to remember is that nor'easters, we often associate them with, kind of the, kind of our worst winter storms that we get in the winter. But nor'easters can obviously feature rainfall just depending on the time of year and the time of track. In this case, we are going to be seeing northeasterly winds coming in ahead of the system itself, which is, a crucial component giving it the name nor'easter. But, obviously one factor as to why so many will see mixing or a change to rain is that, sea surface temperatures, it's still fairly early in the season for a nor'easter, but we have sea surface temperatures that are still well above the freezing mark. So that's able to push some of that warmer air, those warmer temperatures in off the Atlantic, allowing for that snow to mix with or change to rain. And really, this is going to be kind of that, I think people often call it, that back, for the people who get it, the back-breaking snow where, for almost everyone, temperatures are going to be at or just above freezing, even where it does fall as mostly snow. So this is going to be, obviously, for parts of the province, a very heavy, wet snow, but then for many, it's just going to be more so a rain and wind event. But, certainly by definition, this is a nor'easter, although it's kind of giving us a bit of everything, or will be giving us a bit of everything.
Some people refer to that as heart attack snow because you have to exert so much energy to move it.
Mm-hmm. You have to be very careful, obviously, when shoveling this snow, just because there's so much water contained in it. It can be very heavy. So yes, certainly for some who will have to dig out the shovels or snow blowers tomorrow, do take care doing so.
All right, Allister, let's start with the urban areas here in HRM. Of course, that's where the radio station is, so we'll start here. Sure. What can we expect here starting this after, I guess, and when can we expect it to start?
So it looks like during the drive home, the afternoon commute, always seems to be that these systems line up with one of the commutes, but it will be afternoon drive home into the evening for Halifax and Metro. But I do think, the initial period of wet snow will likely change over quite quickly to rain here in the city itself, and especially at the coast. So that's going to limit potential accumulations as you move farther inland out to Bedford, Sackville, now Uniacke to the airport. That's where it will be a period of wet snow a bit longer. So the potential that we see perhaps some greasy roads developing, although I'm not expecting during that time a significant amount of snow to come down, which is good news. And then eventually, as we go into and through the evening, that mixing line with rain starts to push inland. So any snow does eventually change over to rain outside of the urban areas this evening.
I was listening to your forecast on my drive in this morning, and what is, I think, unique with this storm is we're going to see the temperature rise as it comes ashore.
That's right. I mean, at this time of year, the passage of these weather systems can lead to often what I'll call like an abnormal temperature trend where, usually our temperature is falling at night, but as will be the case tonight, it will be on the rise. So in the city, this afternoon will be near, about 2-3 degrees. 2 is the guaranteed high for today. But as we go into the night tonight, temperatures are forecast to climb up to about 4 or 5 degrees. Inland, likely hovering around 2 or 3, so not getting as warm. But yes, temperatures will be rising late evening and overnight, and then falling back towards about 1 or 2 degrees around sunrise on Wednesday morning. So that's where I'm also kind of keeping an eye on this system, where with that fall back in temperature coinciding with some heavier precipitation, which could bring some cooler air down closer to the surface, we could see at least a mixing or a change back over to wet snow Wednesday morning for the commute. So that's where I'm kind of eyeing the messiest weather in terms of snow for HRM, potentially Wednesday morning. And I still don't think that will provide us, a significant amount of snow, but especially the farther inland you are, there could be, some slushy accumulations on Wednesday morning, and then, likely tapering off closer to the city. And then the system is kind of departing as we go through Wednesday morning to early afternoon, so it starts to clear out, but not a great drive Wednesday morning, and the winds are going to be quite strong on Wednesday morning too, gusting upwards of 70 kilometers per hour. So just not great weather for commuting Wednesday morning. But as you mentioned, temperatures kind of all over the place. On the rise tonight, falling back not quite to freezing, but about 1 to 3 degrees, depending on where you are in HRM by sunrise tomorrow.
Alister, what kind of amounts are we looking at here? Do you have an idea of 30, 40, 50 millimeters-ish?
Yeah, so it looks like for Halifax and from really most of HRM, it's going to be a 30 to 50 millimeter rainfall event, and that will be the case really for much of the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia. There could be some pockets upwards of 60, especially for parts of the South Shore where there is a rainfall warning in effect. But really, it's largely a 30 to 50 millimeter rain event. The inland communities, as I mentioned, Bedford, Sackville, Mount Uniacke, Beaverbank, Enfield, looks like it could be a few slushy centimeters before mixing over to that rain this evening. So likely anything that does accumulate melts. And then in that potential change back over to snow early on Wednesday, we could see another slushy few centimeters inland. I'm thinking probably less than 5, but it will be dependent on just where that temperature decides to settle. And then certainly towards the city and the coast, trace, if any, perhaps a couple of centimeters locally on Wednesday morning. So we're not really looking at a great amount of snow for Halifax and HRM, mainly a rain event, but obviously a bit of slushy accumulations possible ahead of the system inland this evening or into the evening, and then again early on Wednesday.
All right, Alister, now how about those areas outside of that? I'm thinking Kings and Carmel, Colchester, and Annapolis and Digby. They're in for more accumulation, are they not?
They are. And I mean, what I will say about the system is that how far this mixing line is able to move inland is going to be crucial to the snowfall, because obviously if there ends up being more mixing with rain, then snowfall accumulations for inland communities will likely be lower. From what I'm seeing right now, it looks like, especially over the high elevations of Kings and Annapolis counties through West Hants and northern or northwestern areas of East Hants, out through Colchester, Cumberland counties, into at least the western half of Pictou County. It looks like about 15 to 25 centimeters of snow, and we could see some pockets over the higher elevations. So obviously in the valley, there's South Mountain. You have the Cobgood Mountains on the North Shore. Some amounts upwards or in excess of 30 centimeters can't be ruled out over those highest elevations. And it will be a similar story in northern Cape Breton too, 15 to 25 centimeters, but in excess of 30 centimeters likely over the Cape Breton Highlands. Now, if we do end up seeing more mixing with rain for places like the Valley, and what I'll say is, it's places like Kentville and Truro that are seeing the most uncertainty right now. If there's the ability for more rain to mix in, perhaps it's about 10 to 15 centimeters rather than 15 to 20 or 25. So I would say that's kind of what you should, plan for, 15 to 25 in places like Truro, Kentville, Greenwood, but the possibility of 15 to 25 certainly possible just given the setup. But it will be, those locations through the valley around the Minas Basin, much of the North Shore and northern Cape Breton that see the bulk of the snow, a general 15 to 25 centimeters, except upwards or in excess of 30 over the higher elevations, the more mountainous terrain.
Alister, some are suggesting that if they have any accumulations that they will just wait and let Mother Nature take care of it and it will melt. But we are, like last night or this morning was, when I got up, it was -6. We're looking at even colder temperatures as we get into Friday.
Yeah, I mean, probably best to clear it if you can, although Mother Nature might be able to handle it gradually depending on how much you do receive, depending on where you are listening from. I mean, as we go through Wednesday night, temperatures do fall back below freezing for most of the province, so anything that is left on the ground will be freezing up. Daytime highs on Wednesday, above freezing for most, but warmest at the coast, not in those areas that receive the snow. Thursday, we do see a more widespread warm up into, the range of about 3 to 5, possibly 6 degrees. So any leftover snow there could melt, but then there's also the possibility that we get into a bit of light snow along a cold front as we go through Thursday night. And as we talked about yesterday, the Arctic air comes flooding in Thursday night into Friday morning with, in Halifax, the low near about -10 to -12 or 13, depending on where you are in HRM. Other parts of the province likely down into the range of, -15, possibly some getting as cold as -18 over northern areas of the province. So there's going to be a very bitter blast of Arctic air moving in for Friday. So any snow obviously left or any melting from that snow will be freezing up. And then on Friday, temperatures remain well below the freezing mark, highs near, depending on where you are, obviously -5 to -9 in the province. So we won't see any melting then. And then for Saturday, even to southwestern areas and perhaps parts of the Atlantic coast will climb just above the freezing mark. Halifax likely near zero, but inland will be below freezing on Saturday. So there's no double digits in the forecast like we've been experiencing with these last few systems. So probably best to clear it away if you can, although Mother Nature will try to take care of it on Thursday. But if it's not gone by Thursday afternoon, probably best to clear it if you need it out of the way, because we will be settling into that much cooler air mass for Friday and right through the upcoming weekend, and really for at least the first half of next week.
And are we done with these snowmakers, at least for the short term, Allister? What's the long term prognosis looking like?
So we have that cold front Thursday night with showers to a period of light snow, but it's really not anything too significant. It's then looking fairly quiet through the upcoming weekend and into the start of next week. I mean, there are signals in the pattern that as we go towards the middle and later stages of next week, that we could see another system start to approach the region. Although at this time, the models are very much not in agreement. Some showing more of an offshore track, which would favor snow, but others have more of a western track, which would favor rain. So I would say generally the unsettled pattern will be continuing, although in terms of more larger scale weather events beyond the weather tonight and Wednesday, and then that weak cold front Thursday night, it doesn't look like there's anything too impactful on the horizon until perhaps the middle of next week.
We will have, of course, the latest updated forecast for you from Allister this afternoon, and we will have full coverage of the arrival of this storm tomorrow. If there's any issues with roads or schools or power or anything like that, just make sure you keep your radio locked right here to 95.7 News Radio, and we will provide that for you. Allister, my friend, always a pleasure.
Appreciate it, Dan. And, I would say see you Friday, but who knows? Maybe it'll be sooner.
We'll see. Thanks,
Okay.
Allister. That is Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. As I said, you can hear his forecast morning and afternoon right here on the radio station. And yes, we will be keeping a very close eye on this. And just keep your radio locked right here, and keep the webpage halifax.citynews.ca and your favorites. And we will keep you up to date with any possible problems that are a result of this rain event that we're going to see in HRM. And for those of you in the snow area, we'll do our best to keep you updated as well. We're going to take a break here on the program. Blake's going to update us with the latest in the news. And on the other side of it, we've talked about e-scooters and e-bikes a lot during the open hours. Well, there's some research that's getting underway to track injuries from these new devices. Can I call them that? A conversation with a trauma team leader down at the IWK. That would be Dr. Kirstin Weerdenburg. When we return, you're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Allister, and we're back in minutes. Welcome back to The Todd Veinotte Show. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday as we roll along here. We've had plenty of discussion on the program over the last few years about this, or over the last year, I guess, about this pilot project that's underway here in HRM. And I'm looking out the window at a spot where the scooters are parked. and you don't have to drive around very far to see somebody on an e-scooter or by extension on an e-bicycle these days. And there's been a lot of discussion about sort of liabilities and who's responsible for what. And a CBC article popped up into my inbox a couple of days ago that raised some very interesting questions for me. And it says, and I'll read a little bit of it here, a Halifax Regional Municipality pilot project that allows people to rent e-scooters and bikes saw 118,246 rides during its first 6 months. So quite popular, right? But data on injuries riders have sustained is far less specific, at least for now. Now, at a recent Halifax Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, project manager of shared micromobility, that's Brittany McLean, acknowledged it, and she says, and I quote, "We're hoping that at some point we'll be able to gather more of that data whether it be through the hospital, emergency rooms, or ambulance or paramedic data," she said. And she went on to say that, "I don't have information right now, but I know that the municipality has been very interested in that, and Nova Scotia Health has been a close partner in trying to sort out that information." Also included in the story from the CBC was our next guest, who is a trauma team leader at the IWK Hospital and has been watching the rise in the popularity of these micro-mobility devices, or these e-scooters and e-bicycles, like many of you have. And I'm very pleased to welcome into the show today to tell us a little bit more about some of the observations that she has seen thus far is Dr. Kirstin Weerdenburg. Dr. Weerdenburg, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. This is something that is relatively new, right? These micromobility devices haven't been around for a super long time, and many have raised the same concerns I'm hearing in part of this article about their use and injuries that are associated with them.
Yes, I would say probably over the past 3 years, there's been a quite significant rise in use, and then the associated injuries that we've been seeing with it in the emergency departments.
And you see, obviously, kids under the age of 16, and we know that everybody uses these things, but I see more kids or younger people on them than older people. And you're seeing that a lot of the injuries are related to the lack of use of a helmet.
Yeah, so there's been an observation that a lot of the kids that are using these and adults that you see using them on the street, that the more often than not are not using helmets. And there's been studies that have shown the same, that the majority of the riders, 60 to 80% are not using helmets, or it's not known if they were using helmets during their injury.
We don't have a lot of good data on the injuries that are associated with these devices.
No, we don't. And so that's what we're looking into at this time.
What and how would you collect this data? Would you go to the emergency rooms, or what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so I work as a pediatric emergency physician as well at IWK Health. And so we're looking to collect data on e-scooters and e-bikes and the types of injuries that we're seeing with those. We also want to look into whether these are their own personal e-scooters or these are rentals, and then see what are the types of injuries that we're finding, because we do have observations about that and discussions about the types of injuries, but we'd like to have some more helpful information, that's confirmed with the type of injuries that we're seeing, so that we can notify those that are using them, the public, and also those that are providing them for rentals.
Because they're so new, and 3 years in the grand scheme of things isn't a long time. People may not understand the risks that are associated with, because they go pretty quick.
They do, yes. And there's quite a range on the speeds that they can go. And like I said, they're quite popular. So when one, child or adult sees somebody else using it, then they want to try it too. And I think there's just a lack of education and information on, what are the ideal speeds and what are the types of injuries that we need to prevent.
So basically what we have right now is just anecdotal information, just observations. What you're looking for is some real numbers.
Yeah, well, we do have some information from other cities across Canada. There was a study done in Calgary several years ago. But, as we know, each jurisdiction and city is different. I've seen a lot of injuries of kids falling off e-scooters going down hills. Halifax is a very hilly city. So I think that we need, more specific data to our area, especially since the city started the pilot program.
I would imagine as an emergency room physician yourself, even without that data, there are some best practices when it comes to these things, right? And I imagine the helmet is right on the top of that list.
Definitely, most definitely.
And obviously learning how to use them and slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do see is that often it's first-time riders, or they're riding, more than one rider on an e-scooter, or they're using a friend's e-scooter. They don't know how to use it, or the rental, and it's like I said, the first time they're riding it, so they're not used to it, and then they go much faster than they expect, and then fall off of it. And I think because of the physics of the injury, so it's very bottom heavy and top light, they often topple over holding onto the handlebars and don't have time to kind of put their hands out to protect themselves, as we usually do when we fall off devices. So they often have injuries to the face and the upper part of the body, and forearm, arm fractures, and also some legs as well when they fall.
I've not ridden one myself. But I have watched people ride them and who have far better balance than I do. Having one foot in front of the other and riding on one of those things would be just terrifying for me.
Yes, I agree.
You plan, obviously, we're into the latter months of the year, well, the last month of the year, and we're getting into that the winter season. So I would imagine that e-scooter use and e-bike use will drop off. You're planning to begin this research next year, correct?
Yeah, so I had also had a radio interview, I think 2 years ago now, and from that interview, the city connected with me because they were really interested in learning more about the types of injuries that we were seeing with us since these had grown in popularity, and because they were starting the pilot program, they wanted to partner with us and get some of that information, though it is limited, I have to say, because we're only going to be collecting that information from emergency departments. And so, lots of people might not present to the emergency department from an injury, but at least it will give us one look into an area that we don't have any information on it yet.
Well, keep us in the loop, and hopefully the radio interview helps you get more eyes on this, Dr. Weerdenburg.
Yes, thank you so much.
Have a fantastic day.
Thanks, you too.
That is Dr. Kirstin Weerdenburg. She's a trauma team leader at the IWK in Halifax. Just going back to the article in the CBC, research that Dr. Weerdenburg had mentioned in Edmonton in 2025 saw 759 incidents. Most patients had multiple injuries with fractures, 32% of them, and head injuries being at 17%. Helmet use infrequent, 2%. And concurrent substance use was prevalent at 26%. Something that I've often thought about wandering around in downtown Halifax and seeing these scooters on the side of the road. I'm assuming, and maybe it's a bad assumption, but I'm assuming that these things are classified as a motor vehicle under the Motor Vehicle Act. And and maybe somebody who knows better, and I'm looking at you retired police officers, I imagine that same rules apply when it comes to riding a bicycle that's an e-scooter, right? And if you've had too many, you could end up either A, seriously hurting or killing yourself, but B, also end up on the wrong side of the law. Anyway, a similar study in Calgary found that e-scooter injuries represented about 15% of transportation-related injuries in local emergency departments. For every 1,400 e-scooter trips, there was one emergency department visit. And I know that we've taken calls on this in the open hour in the past, and the issue of liability, I haven't got a real good answer on that. But with data that Dr. Weerdenburg and her colleagues are working on and these other studies across the country, might be something that City Council takes a look at if they haven't already. Taking another break here on the program. When we come back, going to change things up a little bit here on a Tuesday. We're going to welcome into the studio an artist who is going to release what's being called an innovative and instrumental solo acoustic album. And Asif Illyas is here, and he's going to tell us all about his new album when we return. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Well, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. From time to time, we like to change things up here on the program and shine a bright spotlight on some of the fantastic local talent that we have in Halifax. I talk about it all the time, and this part of the world, I think it's because of where we live, but this part of the world seems to spawn just some very talented people who are doing all kinds of really exciting things and getting out there, and we're doing what we can to give them a helping hand. And today I'm welcoming into the studio, Asif has done just so much stuff that and many of us wouldn't even know about, because a lot of it happens in behind the scenes. But now he's stepping back in front of the microphone and in front of the recording studio, and has produced a new album. And I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio today to tell us a little bit about it is Asif Illyas. Asif, how are you?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So you've been obviously doing this for a very long time, right? Scoring films and doing TV and all kinds of things, working with people like a friend of ours, Lenny Gallant, and you did some work with Cutting Crew and Natalie Cole, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it's been a long, I've been doing it since I got out of high school. I wanted to be a pilot, but then took a year off and learned how to play guitar properly to audition for Dalhousie.
Right.
And then, it went on from there, and then left Dal probably 2 years in because we got signed to a label here in Canada, and
nice.
Big Picture, and then after that Mir, and so
yeah,
a lot of different experiences in the music industry for sure.
So tell me a little bit about this latest creation that you have. I see you have it in front of me, and Todd would be very happy to know that you produced it on vinyl, because that's his thing now. But right. The artist will tell me that when you are building an album, it's really a journey, right?
Totally, it is. Yes, and this one is very. I kind of did it because I wanted to pivot back to just a real elemental kind of focus on, what music is to one person. That's why I named it Autonomy. And I discovered that, I started on guitar, and, doing production for film and television and producing music, you get lost in the world of plugins and, computer music and everything. I just wanted to return right back to the roots. So this album actually took a very short period of time to record, but it took 2 years to prepare for, because I wanted to do it like they used to back in the 60s and 70s, where you would just really get your songs and you're practicing and get your chops up, and then you would go in and record because you were doing it right to tape. So I actually did do it to tape, to half-inch reel to reel, and I wanted the performance to be top to bottom because I'm playing all the parts at once. So it was a real sort of acrobatic thing to do. So I needed to practice. That was my time that I spent, like you're talking about how long it took.
Yeah.
It was in practicing to learn how to play this style, and then just going in and within 3 days getting it all recorded. So in the natural progression from reel to reel back then, they ended up on vinyl, so it kept the analog approach all the way through.
Right.
So that's why I decided to put it onto record.
So no auto-tunes, nothing. Just pure Asif.
Yeah, it's the anti-artificial intelligence approach, because everything these days, you never know what's real and what's fake.
Right.
So, yeah.
And this one is certainly real. Listening to bits of it, tell me a little bit. How would you describe it? What is it? Classical? Is it?
It's pop music, because I love pop music. I love listen to this like my whole life since I've been in Halifax since 1982. But it's kind of got classical roots. It's got folk roots, but I'm playing the drums, the bass, the internal harmonies, and the melody all at once. And it's a style called percussive guitar, and I've kind of come up with my own term called 4D fingerstyle, which is 4 dimensions, because you're doing the drums, the bass, and then maybe a keyboard part and the melody all at once. So you're hitting the guitar kind of like a flamenco style,
right?
And you're playing the melody and then putting all the parts in. So it actually sounds like a kind of a band coming out of one guitar. I used to do it with a looper, but I got tired of being shackled to like 4 or 8 bars.
Right.
And this provides more freedom. And they're all original tunes on this. And it was sort of a challenge to myself 2 years ago, and I said, I got to see it through.
A lot of people that are listening right now can't get their heads wrapped around just playing rhythm on something, never mind playing 4 parts on and all at the same time.
Yeah, you kind of have to see it to understand what's going on. I have some videos. Actually, there's a video being put out today, and the vinyl record is actually a hero in the video, because breaking news, the video is that Voyager 1 that left in 1977 actually has my record on it.
Really?
Yes, and you can see it on the video. You can see the journey of it through the solar system. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Learn something every day here. That's pretty cool. You mentioned AI, and I know that in particularly in the field that you do, and going back to scoring television and movies and those kind of things, there has and continues to be a lot of debate about it. What is your thoughts on it? Does it have a place, or is this leading to the end of what you do for a living?
Well, it's really interesting. That's a really great question because the tools that we have as musicians or producers or composers are getting more and more robust. So, it's getting easier and easier to do what we do, which is not necessarily a good thing because I find that the challenge in creating new things is in the work and getting, right down to doing it in the real way, like performing. For example, if you play a flute for 3 hours, you're going to come up with something different. It's different from programming a flute and fixing it. So there is a place for it, though. I mean, it's a wave that's coming. I don't think we're going to be able to run away from this. So I've been embracing it in other areas in media creation, like with video and helping me to do the job of releasing an album on my own. But in terms of music, I think my pivot away from it was to stick with the challenge because I love the challenge, and I think people are going to have to do that or be able to use the AI plugins and the software to try and innovate with new things. And I think that will happen, just like we used computers in the 60s and 70s, and look where we are now. I think we don't know the type of creations that are going to come out of using AI in music, and it could be a whole new renaissance, really. So, I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I think we have to keep a line tethered to the past as well.
It's the same in my industry as well, right? There are applications that are being created that can do some of the stuff that I do or what Vanessa does on a daily basis. And I think the way that I look at it is that you're right. It's here. It's not going to go away. But I think as long as we use it responsibly, right?
Exactly.
We use it to augment, not replace.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, it's going to help in the end, but it always gets abused, right?
It does get abused, and AI, in AI they use the term hallucination. It's right now. It's still when it doesn't know what to do, it just hallucinates something. So it'll just tell you something, and it does that musically as well. When it doesn't know really what to write, it'll just come up with some weird stuff that doesn't sound informed or human. So,
right. Yeah. And there's nothing better than sitting in front of somebody with their fingers actually on the strings playing, right? That experience, the AI will never replace.
No, and all those imperfections and everything that come from that.
What are you talking about? It's perfect every time, isn't it?
That's right.
You brought the vinyl in. There's a vinyl release party happening on Thursday at the Carlton, right?
Yep, at the Carlton. There's only about 10 tickets left. So that's going to be I'm going to be playing through the album plus doing some songs from my other catalogs and stuff, singing some tunes with my daughter as well.
Nice.
And
what's that experience like?
It's wonderful. She's been singing since she was, since she could walk. So that's been great. And our son plays hi-hat on this. One thing that you can't do by hitting the guitar is play the hi-hat. So he plays hi-hat on one track.
Tough to get the feet going at the same time, right?
That's right. You have to be like the true one-man band with the big bass drum on your back.
There you go. Anyway, maybe that's next for you. Maybe that's the next album, right? Now that Autonomy is out there and you're going to release the vinyl release, I know it's probably early on, but have you got anything in the hopper, anything that you're working on down the line?
Well, I'm working on doing the videos for this because I find that it's a real creative avenue to tell the story. Playing the Winter Warmer Festival up in New Brunswick in January, a couple of other shows down in Bridgewater I think it's like the Red Barn. It's a series.
Okay.
And and then tonight actually I'm doing a workshop on percussive guitar at Long and McQuaid, and that's free. So I think the rain's not supposed to start till late evening, so pop down to Long and McQuaid on Kennard Street as well.
And you might learn something and get to see Asif play. Asif, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the release of the vinyl and with the album. And when that next project comes along, don't be shy. Drop in.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Asif Illyas. The album is called Autonomy. If you want to check it out, Long and McQuaid tonight, or you want to go down to the Carlton, you better hurry, though. He says there's only 10 tickets left for the vinyl release party. That will happen at 7:30 at the Carlton. Everything available on his website. And if you're at all interested, get out there and buy it, because that's how we support local artists, is that we buy their stuff, right? We're going to get ready to take a break. Blake's going to update us on what's going on in the news. On the other side of it, it's time for the open hour. We had a vigorous debate yesterday. I'm wondering if that's going to continue today. We're going to open up those lines right now. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour right after the news. All right, welcome back. It's time for the open hour. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Your opportunity. That was weird. It was like a Jimi Hendrix feedback there happening. Anyway, Vanessa's working on it. The gremlins always show up, right? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is the number. The open hour rules are as usual. Right? This is your opportunity to talk about whatever it was. We had a vigorous debate yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. I did. And I was on the opposite side of most of you, and that's fine. That's why we do this here. And we can certainly continue that conversation if you like on tax assessments. It's relevant because City Council today, in their meeting that got underway about an hour ago, are debating that very motion, asking for a staff report looking at those property assessment caps, and if it's fair and equitable to the entire municipality as a whole. That debate will go on today. If they get it done before the end of the show, we certainly will let you know. But as I said at the top of the program today, even if council gets a staff report, that's what they're called, and then they debate that staff report, and if they pass a motion asking the province to remove the cap, the province still has to remove the cap. And based on the calls that I took yesterday from you all, I'm not going to suggest the Premier is going to be very quick to make that change. But I think it's still worth a little bit of a debate. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And for the benefit of you that don't know what we're talking about, property assessments are currently capped in Nova Scotia at, I think it's CPI. I think it's 1.5% to 2%, or if the increase in the assessment is lower than that 2%. What the problem is, and the problem that I see, is that when a property is sold, that cap comes off. And the person that is buying that home will pay the full tax on the full assessment of that property. What it leads to, in my opinion, is that you can take a walk down your street, and I know houses are all different sizes and shapes, but for the sake of this argument, all the houses are the same, and there's 10 houses on the street. And 10 people are paying 10 different tax rates, or taxes. The rate's always the same, but because of their assessment, they're paying 10 different tax bills for the same services. And I don't think that's right. Many of you have a differing opinion, and that's cool. And you may want to carry that conversation on today. Again, the lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Also, kind of got lost in the shuffle in the news yesterday, but the party led by Danielle Smith in Alberta had a convention-ish, a meeting-ish, general meeting maybe, on the weekend, and a lot of things happened there. The reception, from what I understand, to her and her discussion about the pipeline deal, not warmly welcomed. There were cheers. There were groans and maybe even some boos. But the story that, or the bit of that conversation that caught my attention, and I thought I would bring it to you and see what your thoughts on it are, is that Premier Smith is toying with the idea of instituting a castle law in Alberta. Now, what's a castle law, you say? It's essentially the law would protect homeowners who use excessive force to protect their home. So somebody breaks into your house, you beat them up, like that happened in Lindsay, Ontario this summer, and you would be protected from prosecution. Now, how far that goes, I think, remains up to debate. Does it give you free rein to take another life? That would all be part of the legislation. But the question is, should you be able, under the law, to use excessive force or even deadly force to stop someone breaking into your house? A castle law. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Enough of me talking. Let's get to the phones and welcome Carlos to the show. Carlos, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Good. So it's interesting to see this debate on the cap. Again, revisiting, it did happen last year during the municipal election. Now, if you go back to where it started with Premier like Baxter, NDP Premier Baxter, and basically around his time that in the South Shore, and you'd see this happen through the whole province. There was all these families with modest and low income, and they start to see people moving in, building expensive multi-million-dollar home, and eventually these families basically living in farms. So the assessment increase above and beyond. Even though they didn't do any change to the property, no improvement or anything. So the property tax cap, so this that was brought in to basically make sure the traditional Nova Scotia families will not be forced to sell their property because of the new high assessment value. And after COVID, then we still see, I think it does work because it has kept the property tax tied to inflation, especially in the heated housing market. You know, if you take this out, a possibility is that you see ordinary families from Nova Scotia who are facing now high cost of living feel the pressure to sell their home. Really, I saw you asking if how does that help you to moving into the market? It doesn't. The intent of the cap was not to help people joining the house market. It was to make sure that Nova Scotian family would not lose their home because other people from other provinces are moving here. If anything, actually, I would say if you remove the cap, it will make it more difficult. Unless you feel confident to win a bidding war with someone from Ontario or something like this. So, in my view, the cap is working, is doing its job as it intend to. If the idea is how can we help people moving in the market, that's something else. That's a different law. But that's
Carlos, but what it has done, maybe the intention was justified, right? Keeping those families in their homes, and I understand that part. But what the unintended consequences is that it's now created inequity in the tax market. Somebody that's next door to you is paying more tax than you are.
For 1 year, right? If you
but
buy
that assessment never goes down, right? It's you know what I mean? Like, yes, you'll get that big jump at the beginning of the year, but then you're going to be capped, but you're still going to be capped at that higher assessment.
Right. Yeah, surely. But if you take it out, it doesn't mean that this is going to come down. It's the opposite. Before it was on, it was a completely chaos. People having different assessment. It gave some sort of a normalcy tied into the inflation. If you take it out, you're going to see a number of Nova Scotian family in the rural area losing their home 100%. I wouldn't be surprised at all. If the problem is how do you pay for service, that's something else. Okay, I heard the councillor that's saying, it's too costly for the garbage, to clean the. So okay, so then you look at what's the cost for outsourcing garbage collection, and you try to maybe do some other options. But this cap in itself, I would be very careful not to take it out with the consequence. And I understand what you said. There is different people, and this should be addressed. But I don't think the solution is to throw this cap altogether out. But anyway, that's just my view.
I appreciate it, Carlos. Have a good one.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break.
Axe.
All right, welcome back. A few lines open if you want to get in on the conversation. The number is 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Lots to talk about out there. Got an email this morning from Mark, and it reads, Dan, I totally get your point. Why should you pay more tax than someone living in a similar home in a neighborhood? But you can't blame that person. You should be blaming council who waste our tax dollars yearly on foolish things like bike lanes. Tax assessments are out of control, and will continue to be out of control until HRM reins in its spending. And that comes to us from Mark. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We welcome Bob to the program. Bob, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you today?
I am well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I want to completely 1,000% agree with your comments. I bought or built a home in Stewiacke.
Okay.
And have a similar situation there in property taxes. I built a bungalow. It's a retirement home. Not a big bungalow, but a bungalow. I'm on Kitchener Street. And to my surprise, I got my tax bill. And I went down to the main office and I said, think we have a problem here. I've already paid my taxes for the year. And they said, no, you paid half of them. To my surprise,
wow,
my tax bill is $7,400 a year.
Wow.
And I said, excuse me, if you don't mind, I said, you know, the person that was standing there, most respectful person, all, I said, you don't seem shocked when I say $7,400 a year. I said, I've built subdivisions throughout the city and in Elmsdale in my past career.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, you don't seem shocked. I said, well, we live in a pretty little village and we're proud of it. And I said, I am too. And I moved here to retire. But I said, I'm shocked at $7,400 when I sold a $700,000 home in Dartmouth that I was paying $5,400 of property taxes. So, Dan, the explanation was we like our little white trucks and we like our village. In greater HRM, I understand our costs are increasing. There's more seniors than there are children, and I understand with everything that we're trying to provide to all of our population, it gets expensive. But, Dan, I'm likely, and I make a good income, but when I retire, I may have to, and I make a good income, I'm going to make a good pension. But when I retire, because of property taxes, it's a deciding point of whether I'm going to keep the house that I built to retire in. Because, and when I went down and talked, this cap that you talk about,
mm-hmm.
my next door neighbor has a nice bungalow. It's a few years old, but in perfect condition. They pay $3,600. I'm paying $7,400.
That's the artificial conditions that get made under this cap.
I'm not getting any more than he's getting. Actually, I'm paying for my super box. His mail's coming to him. I went down to the town and said, I have a ditch in the front of my house, and I don't like it. It's falling in. It's dangerous when I'm mowing my lawn. Could you help me out? No. So I spent $10,000 to put culvert and grass and built it as per their allowances. But I said, so what am I getting for my taxes? You're not even going to fix my ditch. But then, I guess in short, I don't want to tie up your whole program. I know that as taxpayers, we're maxed out in trying to provide everything to everybody. But my goodness, it's got to stop somewhere. And we keep asking for more, and people don't understand, well, we're going to have to pay more. But my next door neighbor pays $3,600. I'm paying $7,400, and there's something wrong with that, Dan. So I agree with your comment. It's ridiculous. It needs to be looked at and changed.
Great call, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right back to the phones, and we welcome Ben to the show. Ben, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to comment quickly on the castle doctrine laws that Danielle Smith is proposing, and I think it might be. I don't quite know her policy position, like her exact prescription for it, but enshrining and clarifying what constitutes self-defense in a I guess, a momentary decision, like when someone breaks into your house, you don't really have time to figure out why they're there. They're already doing something that would be, a crime, and you can't assume they don't mean you no harm. So just enshrining and clarifying the steps that somebody can take to preserve their life, their property, and the safety of their family, I think is nothing but a good thing.
And I'll agree with you, Ben. I think that having a definition on the law is important, but also an education program, right? Because if we put a castle law into effect and somebody breaks into our house and they end up with a 12 gauge down, pointed at their head, like what does that institute, right? So I think that you're right.
Well,
I think that we need to have a definition so people know what they can and they can't do.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, in a lot of these situations, like sometimes, like nobody, if you ask any service member or anything, like nobody wants to take a life, right? Any law enforcement officer, any professional soldier will probably tell you, like, they're not. I'm sure there are a few exceptions to that rule, but as a general rule, like nobody really wants to take a life, so it's already a hard decision to make. But you don't really have. I think the threat of being met with potentially lethal force would be a deterrent for a lot of criminals, right? Because right now the law is so ambiguous that even if it does constitute self-defense, at least at a federal level, that you're going to end up going through the court system one way or another. You might spend time in prison on remand. So it's really it really deters that. And when you also have police authorities like we had in Brampton and in a few municipalities across Ontario, just say, in case of home invasion, just leave the keys by your door. I don't think that sends the right message either, because now you have the citizenry afraid. Now, we do need guardrails on this because, like you said, you don't want it's like, somebody breaks into a house and the first thing that happens is they're just met with, double-aught buck. I think that is shouldn't classify as a self-defense, right? But that it's always a hairy situation, like you see in the places it exists. People do get charged they still do get charged for murder or aggravated assault and things like that when they are acting in what they feel is self-defense. So, but adding those guardrails of saying, hey, if somebody's in my house, let's say with a stolen handgun, right? I have 3 small children myself. If somebody was in my home with a gun, my first priority is always going to be the defense of my children. And if they're there with especially with a weapon, I have to assume that they mean me harm. So, giving a liberty to somebody to potentially defend themselves without being dragged through a murder trial would probably, one, act as a deterrent to criminals, and 2, give peace of mind to homeowners, property owners, and just citizens in general, that their government believes them responsible enough to make a necessary hard decision, right? Because the police, unfortunately, can't prevent bad things from happening. They can only prosecute them once they've already happened.
Thanks, Ben. I'm up against the break, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think the guardrails is the important part. I think the guardrails need to be in there. It can't just be a blanket, your castle law, and you're able to do within that footprint of your home, whatever it is, because then what's to stop somebody from sticking that 12 gauge in the face of somebody that's listening at the front door? Right? Education would have to be absolutely important with this. because being a gun owner myself and having gone through the safety programs that we have, they don't go through the continuum of force, and they don't go through what constitutes the use of excessive force. They teach you how to safely use a firearm, not how to protect your home. Going to take a break. The open hour continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back. A couple of lines open if you want to get into the conversation today. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I'm well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, guess. No, it was a very robust discussion for a couple of hours yesterday.
Yeah.
It was quite good. I want to talk briefly about the cap, but I do want to mention something that ties into what your previous caller was saying about the guns and self-defense and all this kind of stuff.
The Castle Law.
The gun laws, as they stand right now, restrict a person's ability to defend yourself. By that, I mean that if you are to comply with the existing gun laws, you have to keep your firearm locked in a safe, a cabinet. You have to keep your ammunition locked away separate from that gun.
You are correct.
And if I don't know if you've ever been in the position, I have once years ago, where someone trying to break into my home while I was here. This was before the gun laws, and luckily I was able to load my shotgun, which was at hand. Now, if you're in a position, Dan, think of your own home. If you're in a position and someone's banging at the door or jimmying in your door to try and get in, do you really have time to, one, notice what they're doing, assess the situation, get to your gun cabinet, call 911, get your gun out, get the ammunition, put it all together, and be able to defend yourself? I don't think you'd have time.
I just the layout of my gun safe and where my ammunition's stored, and this likely happens at night in my bedroom. I don't think there would be time.
No, there wouldn't be, because most of us, and I gave up hunting years ago, so I'm not a gun guy now. But when I was, most of the time when we're using our firearms, we have lots of time to prepare for it and safely put them together, use them, whatever, right? But in a panic situation, there's so much going through your mind that you're just not going to be able to process everything quickly enough and be able to do it. And I don't know how you'd get around that part, but if someone does come into your home and they have a gun, what are you going to defend against the gun with?
Well, Chris,
the
Castle Law is not necessarily just for firearms. It's for using excessive force, and it wouldn't take a long time for me to reach behind the bedroom door and grab my Louisville Slugger, right?
Oh, God, I won't break into your apartment then if you got a Louisville there. But you get my point.
I do.
That you're not going to defend yourself against someone with a shotgun or a handgun very well with a Louisville Slugger or a knife or anything like that you could reasonably quickly grab.
Yes,
anyway,
I understand that.
I don't want to belabor that point. That was just a thought I had. So with the cap, I guess we're looking at fairness and equity as being one of the principles behind getting rid of the cap, or that's what people think. I don't think it'll work that way, because government has a hard time doing anything, but governments cannot legislate and bring about equity. It just can't happen. A lot of that, I think, is dependent upon society's involvement and the way society progresses or lack of progression. But let's go through a little scenario. I paid, when I bought my house, which is over 25 years ago, I paid full market price for the home. And first of all, I want everyone out there to know that I agree that the fairness between someone paying twice as much as I do or anyone else does for the same services, that's why I'm in full agreement of a user pay system where we pay for our services regardless of the size of our home. I'm all in favor of that, Dan, and I think you are too.
Well, we have to have a better system because of this artificially created environment now, right?
Exactly. The system of calculating our assessments and basing those assessments on how much we pay in property taxes, that's outdated, it's flawed, it's wrong. But government has got to look at changing the system, not just getting rid of the cap arbitrarily. Say, there, That'll do it, because it won't do it. Anyway, I paid full market price for my home when I bought it. My assessment increased the year after I bought the home to reflect the purchase price that I had paid. Yet my next-door neighbors didn't have an increase. Their property assessments didn't jump to where mine was because they hadn't just bought their home. They lived there for a number of years, right, before I did. This was all before. I bought my house before the cap was introduced. So this same situation occurred prior to the cap. It's not the cap's fault. And you have to recall, I think it was Carlos that was explaining how the cap originated. He did a very good job on that, and he's absolutely right. That is how it originated. What you've got to think about is, at the time that I bought my home, my household income was approximately $50,000 a year. My mortgage rate was 10%. I was talking to a young couple the other day, and this situation or this topic came up. They've recently bought a house about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Their mortgage currently is 3.6%, but when they bought the house, they were paying 1.5% mortgage.
Right.
Also, their family income is over $200,000 per year. My assessment has increased from the time I bought my home till now. It's increased over, and this is the capped assessment, has increased over 400%, 4 times what I paid for the house. So I'm paying, in my opinion, I'm paying my fair share of property taxes. In order to pay for that home, I took no vacations ever, no fancy vehicles, no extravagant living. I sacrificed and put my priorities into buying and paying for and running my home. Today, I and many other people that are under the cap have lived in our homes for a number of years. And any of us who are retired, we're living on pensions that are generated from monies invested, put away, dues paid in a pension plan at hugely
The cap's only
lower
20 years
income.
old, though, isn't it, Chris? Like you would have bought your house before the cap, right? So
I did. I bought my house before the cap.
So I don't get the argument that your pensions and everything else are based on money you made when you bought your house. The cap didn't happen until. Go ahead.
Please let me finish.
Sure.
Now, what I'm getting at is that this thing that you're saying about how the person they buy their house today, their assessment jumps up. Mine did the same thing when I bought it, and it was before the cap. It's always been that way.
Right.
It's always been that way. And the people who are in their homes now and their taxes are capped, and maybe they've been there 30 years or 40 years or whatever, and they've long paid off their house, hopefully, or whatever, they're now living on income and by way of a pension that was generated on an earned income that was a fraction of what people are making today. So their incomes are not big. Their pension incomes are not big. And because of that, they can't afford these higher property taxes. Now, like I said before, the system, I think, has to be changed. Assessment-based property taxes is not the way to go. And I don't know what the best system to be other than pay for the services that you're getting, granted, but there also has to be some factoring in there of a taxpayer's ability to pay as well. So if your income is $50,000, your next door neighbor's is $200,000, maybe you get a little bit of a break because you're a low income taxpayer. If you get what I'm saying. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, Chris, then you're gonna, then it becomes almost like income tax, right? The more you make, the more tax you pay. And that would be the problem. Anyway, I'm going to let you go, Chris. I'm going to get some more calls. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a good one. We'll chat again tomorrow. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Geez, where are we here? Let's go to Ken. Ken, how are you?
Good, Dan. Just to your analogy of a solicitor is all wrong. I mean, when was the last time that you seen Girl Guide scouts or whatever come over to your house, break the windows in, and then put a gun to your face and say, "Give me $5 for a box of cookies"?
Well,
right?
they can be aggressive, but not quite that aggressive. I get it, Ken. But if we don't have parameters in the law, then if somebody steps foot on their porch and you don't like them, then you can essentially beat the hell out of them.
No, the parameter should be the front door or any other door or window that's in your house. As soon as you break a window or as soon as you break a door, the guardrails are off. It's like, okay, the couple of callers ago, Buddy said that professional, Army or first responders or whatever don't want to take life. No, we don't. But, right, what's the old analogy? shoot or get shot, right? I'm going to shoot first, and I'm going to worry about the consequences later. Now, as far as your Louisville Slugger is concerned, yeah, good if you're 6 foot, 200 pounds, whatever the case may be. What about a single mother that's, 5'2", 120 pounds with a couple of kids in the house? Is a Louisville Slugger going to do her any good?
Is a 12
No.
gauge going to do her any good that she can't get at because it's locked up?
Yes, it is, if she knows how to use it.
Ken,
right?
using your scenario, Ken, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that for me to open my safe and to open my other safe with my ammunition, find the keys, get it all done, get it loaded, 5 minutes. If I'm lucky.
If you look on different sites, there's other places.
I'm using myself as an example, Ken, because I have all this stuff in my house. And it would take me more than 5 minutes to get that all together. And by that time, if that person's going to shoot you, they're going to shoot you.
Well, I mean, may not be to that point here in the Maritimes yet, but
right.
I'll tell you right now, right? If I was living in Brampton, Ontario, and what he was saying was right, the police chief went right on CTV News and said, "Oh, if somebody breaks into your house to get your car, give them the keys." Right? Whereas,
well, I'm not suggesting you do that.
To another one,
yes,
down in the States, right? Down in the States, the Texas sheriff down there saying, "Come on in, and we'll teach you how to shoot a gun, and you guys can save us a whole lot of time." Right? Where do you think the guys are not going to go into a house?
So there's no break-ins in the States at all?
Oh, of course there is. If you're stupid.
All right.
Right?
All right, Ken, up against the break. I appreciate the call. I really do. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I'm not condoning using deadly force. I'm just using my house as an example. I'm a gun owner. I have all the rules followed. I've got things locked up. And if for me to, under a stressful situation, to open all of that stuff up, get it all out, and load it up, no doubt 5 minutes. No doubt. And by that time, obviously my footprint in my house isn't very big. If you have a bigger house and it's down in the basement, and so on and so forth, and provided that you can find all of the stuff you need to get, I know some of you have combinations on your safes and everything. I get it, but is it effective? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying, is it? With a question mark. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. Open hour continues right here till the top of the hour. Email from Ken says, "Hey, Dan, sounds like to me you're making an argument against the storage requirements for firearms. I'm not making that argument at all. I'm just basically telling you that in my situation, in order for me to be able to use my firearm to protect my house isn't an instant thing. And that's because of the storage rules. And the storage rules are there for a reason. But the Louisville isn't. Just saying. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let us go to Gary. Gary, how are you?
No, good, Dan. Good, thanks. I just wanted to talk about the cap because, nobody's thinking about the elderly population. Now, for people that want to downsize and they want to go to an apartment, they have to sell their house, and hopefully you get enough equity to last them a little while.
Yep.
But among my peers, I'm finding that they don't want to sell their home, even though they know that they can't stay in their home much longer. Some of them are really getting sick, and they're starting to become disabled. And when you think about it, the best time to do something is when you're able.
Right.
So, but the problem with the cap is, if they take that cap off, people are not going to be able to afford to stay in their home. But then again, they can't afford to pay the high rents that's happening. And I know people right now that made that move. They said that the equity from their home was going to be enough to pay the rent. Well, that's not really happening either, because they're starting to run out of money, and they're biting their fingernails, wondering what they're going to do next.
Yep.
And there's not enough seniors senior housing. There's no. Well, I shouldn't say there's no senior housing. There's only senior housing from the past, and a lot of that's been taken up by a younger population at a different time. But there's no designated senior housing, and this is what we kind of need in order to get the elderly population, because they can't work. They're not going to be able to find a job to subsidize their rent. So something has to happen. If they want houses to be freed up, they can't be forcing the elderly out of their home, just like an assessor said on your show the other day. They have to do something with the senior population and housing and make it affordable for them. That's just my thoughts, Dan.
All right, Gary.
I just don't think that. I don't think that our governments are made up of young people that are not thinking about where they're going, and they're going to be in that same situation someday. Anyway, take care, Dan.
I appreciate the call, Gary. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And I know a lot of you aren't going to want to hear this, but this is the problem when we put caps on things, right? We've seen it now with the assessment cap, right? There are people that are certainly have, and for its intended purpose, have benefited from it, right? They haven't seen these wild swings in their assessments. And to the other side of that coin, this is the same thing that's happening now with the rental cap, right? There are people that have benefited, and I'm going to say that I'm one of them, that have benefited from this cap, which is currently, at 5%. But if that cap comes off, I talked about it yesterday, then my rent goes up $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. That's the result of these kind of caps. And what's the solution to the property tax cap? I get the sticker shock, I really do, and I sympathize with that. But on the other side of the coin, you have to think about the person that's paying more than double the tax that you are for the very same thing. And that just doesn't seem fair on that side of it, right? That's all I've been saying. So welcome Julie to the show. Julie, how are you?
Fine, thanks. First of all, I'd like to I appreciate you've been teaching me a lot.
Oh, appreciate that, Julie. Thank you.
Explain it in layman's terms. It's so helpful. I'm a senior and have been for 10 years, so they tell me.
You're only as old as you feel, Julie, right? I feel like I'm 16 some days, 75 other days.
Well, the truth is that I'm getting a day older and a day closer to the end, right?
Okay.
And I'm trying to stay where I am in between.
Fair enough.
And I've been staying where I am for 19 years. I live by myself, and I have an amazing landlord who has helped me to maintain staying here.
Okay.
I don't want to move. The agreement was as long as I could stand upright and stay, I could stay in my home. I was called when I became a senior. I was offered a senior's. I said no, because a senior's apartment wouldn't give me what I have here. I have everything I need. If I could live off the grid, I would, if it was possible. I do need the electricity and the power, but
Understood.
I'm quite comfortable where I am. I have nobody above me, nobody beside me. My rent only covers, from what I understand, it only covers the insurance or whatever. If he sells, I'm in a bind because I want to stay here. I have no right to ask to stay here.
Yep, that's the truth.
And I don't want to go anywhere else.
I don't blame you. I absolutely don't blame you.
But I don't want to be homeless, and I'm trying to prevent that.
Right.
And I've been doing everything I can. I'm physically capable of living in my own home. Financially, I can maintain it. I do, I make, but I just want the landlord has no problem with me staying here, but he's getting older. He's getting to the point where it's very discouraging for him to maintain this property because where I am, every time they do construction around the area, it affects the properties that I'm on. Okay? And now it's getting a little frustrating because it's costing him money to maintain here. So now we're in a bind.
I understand, Julie. I apologize. I'm up against the break. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you. But thank you for letting me share.
I will.
Thank you.
My pleasure, Julie.
I wanted to just share that it's not the landlords are trying to maintain, and yes, it's a strange situation. Yeah.
Julie, have a fantastic day.
You.
Okay?
You too. Thanks.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Remember that number. We're going to do this again tomorrow. Don't forget, it's Wednesday. We're going to shift the open hour to noon to make way for house calls. We're going to get an update on the news at noon, and on the other side of it, time to switch things up. Welcome our good friend and astrophysicist, Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, into the studio. It's time for Science Files. If you have a science question, Dr. Rob's here to answer it. We'll see you after the break. Dr. Rob says it's time to go, so let's go. Welcome to Science Files. I'm Dan Holstrand, and he is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Dr. Rob, we always get these conversations started before we go on the air, and they're enthralling.
Absolutely. I'm your producer now. Get to the mic,
he's
Dan.
yelling at me. You got to go. And I'm like, but I'm not done talking yet. Vanessa said she's going to take the rest of the day off, and Rob can take over. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I think it was last week or maybe the week before we were talking about launches and rockets. And you had made the comment along the lines that there's just so many of them now.
Yeah, there is.
I was looking through it's almost a daily event these days.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, when you've got commercial launches going, what is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I did actually go and look this up, but now I've forgotten. But it was like, I think the SpaceX had over 150 last year.
Yeah.
Right? So that's every couple of days, basically, which is really significant in terms of the total amount going off. Now, very often they launch in clusters when there's a lot happening together. But it's hard to keep track of. A very different situation.
I think I might have asked you this question before, Dr. Rob. Is there, with all these launches going off and them becoming more and more frequent, we're getting one almost every day now. Is there a body, an agency, an organization that's responsible to be, I don't know, space traffic control that is monitoring all this stuff so that we don't have a collision or anything?
Kind of. So there is an international agreement about monitoring space traffic in orbit, right? And so that's actually progressed quite a bit in the last few years because initially it was kind of done on a very impromptu way, like people would email the agency responsible for a given vehicle that there was the possibility of some kind of collision, and so please take your avoidance as necessary. So now that's all automated and controlled. But in terms of, for me, the bigger issue is in terms of launches and overall crowding in space in various orbital levels, and that's still a bit of a crapshoot. And that's what a lot of people are worried about, right? Because if you have something go wrong, I'm not going to criticize everyone's, but some people have pointed out that if things go wrong and things are very low down, those things just naturally fall out of the sky more quickly. They have more atmospheric drag because it's still quite thin up there and so on and pulling things down. And so there's a feeling that if we go very wrong, like 300-400 kilometers, that will sort itself out in terms of a few years. But I think that's a little bit irresponsible personally, because if you had a big crash at that level, there would be ejector that was sent out into higher orbits as well. So I would like to see more thinking about that. But at the moment, it's about what you put up there, how you're going to deorbit it, and so on. That's the main thing people are concerned about.
And that was my next question is there are hundreds of satellites and things orbiting the Earth at this point, and I would imagine that some of them have lived beyond their time, and once you put it up there, is it the onus on you to bring it down? Is that the way it works?
Yes, absolutely. So that is a very specific part of licensing for a launch, right? That you have to explain what the deorbit strategy is, or if you're going to push something up into what's called a graveyard orbit as well, that's a possibility too. So those things have been around for a long time, but for all of the sort of like large-scale communications constellations, things like Starlink and so on, all of those things are basically designed on how they come back down. Right. And so that's, again, one of the things we're seeing more and more of is these re-entry events where people see something in the sky and, it's a satellite coming down.
There's only a finite amount of space, albeit there's a lot. but there is a finite amount of space.
It's called space.
Well, that's just it. But are we going to get to capacity up there?
So that's actually a really tricky question because it depends upon how active you think you can make your satellites in terms of collision avoidance, right? Because if you have active collision avoidance, then you can put a lot more things up there than if you put constraints on them to be sort of like passively in orbits that avoid one another. So at the moment, I think the industry is pushing in a direction of overloading orbits, assuming that everything will be easily able to move out of the way. The challenge then becomes when you have satellites that lose the capability to pivot or go anywhere, and then you've got something that's basically a flying rock, right? And so that's the challenge. When things go wrong, what are you going to do? And we need some more solutions for that.
So when we run out of space, then we start to send people back to the moon, right?
So a lot of this is focused on Earth surveillance, right? And we'll see whether that market saturates Earth surveillance and, of course, communication, right? So at the moment, I think there's a clear reason why Starlink is being launched so much, because they want that market and they want to dominate it and not let anyone else in. But that's just not going to happen, right? Other manufacturers are going to get into that space. Boom.
And then we have competition in space and people bumping into each other and the potential for disaster.
The potential for disaster has been there for some time.
Right.
I mean, we've understood Kessler syndrome and the processes that lead to it for a while. Some people will argue that's an overly pessimistic analysis, but there is more and more concern about the dangers associated with having lots of material coming down on a regular basis, right? Literally, people are writing papers now about the risks to aircraft. We've already had the air corridor between Italy and France closed because of the danger a Chinese booster presented to aircraft as that Chinese booster was coming back down again. Right.
And with circling back to where we started, with these launches becoming more and more frequent and almost daily, the potential for interactions with airplanes and people is increased, right?
So, I mean, so what we need to remember is when you do a launch, you've got basically close to going straight up through the air corridors that you're worried about. That's pretty well controlled, in my opinion. It's all of the material that's uncontrolled as it comes down. That's where you've got to be concerned. I mean, literally, some of the Starship breakups that we've seen with Starship re-entering early and so on, those things, that's not safe. Right? Those things have been kind of amazing. I mean, as beautiful as you get this sort of like fireworks show of these things coming back, right? You've got material coming down completely uncontrolled, right? And it's going to be interesting to see if there's more and more of this, what the authorities do to take some kind of control about it.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255, doing some Christmas shopping, Rob, and looking at the Black Friday sales and those kind of things, and started to take a look at 3D printers and the fact that they are becoming increasingly affordable. The filaments are starting to become more affordable. And more people are purchasing them. This is creating backyard engineers that couldn't get into things like this before.
Absolutely, and I think what we're seeing changing as well is like the scale. Right. And so on the commercial side, certainly you now have what's called these large format, right? Additive materials, as they call it. So, but yeah, this is really taking off in a big way. I mean, ironically, I can say that there is now an entire rocket firm that 3D prints the vast part of their actual rocket engines, right? So that's Rocket Labs down in New Zealand, right? So this is already making a big impact on different fields. But the one thing that I was interested to read about this week was a BBC article about boat building, right? And so with one single large format printer, people are now looking at printing boats. And the real breakthrough, I think, is actually the material, right? There's an amazing video, right? The guy has a sledgehammer and he whacks into the side of the hull and it just bounces off. Right, so it's pretty impressive. In fact, he hits it twice just to show that, yeah, I didn't damage it where I hit it first time. So he hits it twice. And the great thing about that is you can 3D print something very quickly compared to all of the labor normally associated with building a hull, right? Hulls are tricky things to build, right? I mean, I come from a family who did boat building, right? And it takes time to actually build a hull, make it all waterproof, make it strong enough, and so on, because these things do have to be able to survive significant impacts as well, right? Because when you, as much as we like to think that boats don't run into things, they run into docks quite commonly, right? So this is a particular manufacturer in Holland, as I recall. And so they now have a combination of fiberglass and thermoplastics that they can 3D print that makes a really, really strong hull. And of course, they can print whatever hull design you want, as long as it's not more than, I think it was 4 or 5 meters wide and 30 meters long. So this is a pretty significant new piece of design work, I think. And they've already got orders from the military for this.
It's interesting. And, you and I talk about AI a lot and so on and so forth. But you have a family connection to the boat building industry. There's a very vibrant boat building industry here in Nova Scotia, right, with long connections to the sea and long family histories through it. And soon it's going to become more economically viable for just somebody with obviously cost prohibitive to buy the machine, but to be able to do it in your garage. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's, again, one of these things is if you want to build something big, then you have to have the resources in the area to do that. That goes without saying. But if you wanted to build something like an 8-foot dinghy in your garage, then technically, yeah, you could probably do that with a medium format, I suppose it is, printer. And will that come about? Inevitably, though, you've got to factor in that if you can build something for a certain amount of money, the investment up front to actually have the printer itself is going to be significantly more than it costs for you to make one, right? And so from that perspective, I'm not sure how practical the medium and large format versions of these printers are going to be for the person at home. Small ones are I mean, it's relative, but I mean, you can get a small scale 3D printer for $500. Yeah. But right? I mean, most of those we're talking like things that are a foot by a foot. That's about the biggest they can do. Yeah, well, you're not going to build a boat out of it, obviously, but the technology is becoming more available. So when that happens, then the prices start to come down. And I was telling you, in fact, that's why I was late getting on the air today. Was I was watching an NFL football game this weekend, and the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts was playing with a broken leg, which was what? But apparently they 3D printed some kind of brace that fit around was form fit to the leg that was in question, and was able to hold it in place, and he was able to play. I mean, I find that pretty incredible. It is. It's just a pain. Whenever you have I've never actually had a broken bone, but I have had shin splints, which were really pretty painful when I got them. And that was just running around with things that are sort of like tiny fractures in the bone, as opposed to having an actual fracture in your bone and playing on that. That's really incredible. Yeah. Anyway, apparently his college roommates, when he went to, because all these NFL players play college football first, have developed this company, and they're the ones who actually built the thing for him. So keep it in the family. We're going to take a break here. When we come back to the phones, you're listening to Science Files on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. He's Dr. Rob Thacker, and we are back in minutes. All right, welcome back. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Rafe to the program. Rafe, how are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. My question was, you guys started talking about the satellite stuff. How big are some of these things that are coming down? They're all different sizes, but what kind of size are we looking at? Yeah, so the Starlinks that have come down, actually, they aren't too big. They're a few hundred kilos, right? So they are actually designed to burn up as well as they can. That's one of the things that they have done about them. So they will, as they're coming down, they'll kind of spread out, so they get heated up and then burn up pretty good. So all of that said, the things that don't do that are actually the Dragon capsules. So there are bits and pieces of Dragon capsules, quite large pieces, that have fallen in remote places. There was a piece in Saskatchewan that was found not so long ago that was sort of like 1 meter by 1.5 meters that was just stuck in the ground. You can imagine what that looked like. So, but for most of the Starlinks and things like that, they are designed to burn up as pretty much as best as you can hope for. So my other question then was, what about the space station? Is that designed to stay up there forever? Or does that have a deteriorating orbit as well? We're talking about
That is a
apartment building coming down.
great question. And in fact, NASA has done a number of requests for proposals for deorbiting the International Space Station. And so the best projected scenario for that right now is to literally put a vehicle on it that's basically an engine, and that will actually bring it down in a powered fashion so that you deposit most of that stuff into an ocean, right? And so probably the Pacific, maybe the Atlantic, it depends. And that's really how they'll bring it down. And the timeline for that is probably 2031, 2032.
Wow, that's coming up.
Yep.
Ooh,
So there's been a series of questions about this, and so NASA said, okay, we'll put out a request for tenders on this. And so a few people have suggested it, but it's really, how can I put it? It's rocket science, but it's not rocket science. You just got to bring it down in a controlled fashion, and that's all you can do.
But the reason for bringing it down, is it just outdated?
Yeah.
Like, why can't it just gets old?
Yeah, no, it's all the systems on it are donkey's years old, right, in some cases.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, while I will say that the tech, this all often surprises people, but the tech that you use in space has to be radiation hardened, right? And so that means very often you aren't too worried about whether it's the latest and greatest. But in this case, some of that stuff, like the pumps and internal systems, they've been up there for decades now.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get wear out. So.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rafe. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I read a headline, and I probably shouldn't do that, but I read a headline that
you make the headlines.
I
don't
know.
you?
The space station has been a busy place as of late, and it has, and correct me if I'm wrong, it has, I think, 8 docking bays on it. And apparently there was a point there this year where all 8 docking bays were occupied.
So I didn't know that all of them were occupied. That's interesting, although there is fairly common resupplies. And so if you have a Dragon resupply unit, that very quickly will actually use up a docking point. Right. So I'm not entirely surprised to hear that. Now you've said it, but and the other thing is you have one of them that is always set aside for the Soyuz life craft as well. So yeah, I mean, we used to actually so NASA and the International Space Station collaboration used to use the shuttle on a regular basis just to bump it up a little bit, just to increase the height. And so now it's on a decaying orbit, and everyone is like, okay, we'll let it go because it's coming down in 6 years.
Is it going to get replaced?
That's a really good question, right? And so if you look at what the US is doing, the US is saying pretty much we're going to let the private sector have low Earth orbit and we're going to go to the moon, right? So the US's approach for the next sort of like big international space station it wants to be in is the Lunar Gateway, right? And whether that happens or not is up in the air right now, I would say.
So all the science that is going on right now on the space station, once it is finished and it's splashed down, then all that science stops.
Well, so no, what they're hoping is that the private sector will step in and start basically building things. I mean, there's always hoping that it will be lower cost. We'll wait and see on that. And then all of the science that gets done in low G, zero G environments is going to be done on private space stations.
Takes a while to put one in orbit, though, right?
Well, it depends. If you're Elon Musk and you have Starship Heavy, you can put 140 tons in orbit, basically.
Right.
Right. So for them, no, they don't actually have too much of a problem. I mean, that's in a way, that's why Starship is so big, right? Because of the things you can do with that much lifting power, right? And so certainly I would think that if we see by 2030, if we see NASA seriously saying, okay, we've got to deorbit the International Space Station, you can guarantee by then Starship will probably be launching on a fairly high reliability, and so there will be a lot of interest in a private space station or space stations, plural.
Or more than one, right? Yeah. Or would it be the same size, or obviously we do things bigger and better, right?
It's not clear. There are a few companies that specialize in designing space stations already, right? And there have been some suggestions for building quite large systems, but all of that's going to get quite expensive if you have no way of making money down the road, right? And so at the moment, if you look at SpaceX and the way it makes money on contracts from NASA, and then it makes money from Starlink as well, right? But it's still probably not enough to finance all the development they're doing on Starship.
Dan and Rob's Space Stellar Hotel.
Well, seriously, there are people who believe that will become a significant market, right? Whether it does or not entirely depends upon the price. The more you can lower the price, the more you can make that affordable, the more you'll have a market for it, right? So that's the big question.
Can you put a swimming pool in space?
Actually, that would be really dangerous.
Right.
Right? Yeah, that would be really dangerous. So no.
Darn. There goes our 5 stars.
Lots of liquid floating around in space is very, very dangerous. Right.
All right. Well, we'll have to scrap that idea. We'll have a lunar pool where you can float in 0G. How's that?
Sounds good to me. It's going to be comfortable.
Science Files continues after the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. This is Science Files. I'm Dan Alstrand. He is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, and he is here to answer your science questions and theoretical question, Dr. Rob. I know you love these ones. It says,
I'm a theorist.
There you go. It says, it comes to us from Patrick, and it says, I have read a very long time ago that Jupiter could have been a small sun if it had been just a bit more massive.
Mm-hmm.
My question, assuming Jupiter had achieved star status, what would the effect be on Earth's orbit and its climate? How would the nighttime sky be different? And will we ever have true darkness?
So that's a good question. So I'll just have to say, well, I can't answer it really quickly. And if you increase the mass of Jupiter enough, so I think it's a factor of like 4 or 5 to put it into brown dwarf territory, then you might actually have an impact on the long-term stability of the solar system.
I was going to say, wouldn't it throw all the orbits off?
Yeah. So that probably would have in particular, that would impact the structure of the inner solar system, because there are certain parts of the inner solar system that are quite strongly impacted by Jupiter, the so-called Trojan asteroids and areas around there. So that might actually change things a bit, right? But so let's throw that bit out and assume that magically Jupiter was in a very, very stable orbit and we could sort of like turn it on. So the long and the short of it is there's going to be times when Jupiter is literally behind the sun relative to us. And so, yes, we'll still have nighttime some of the time. But any other time, if it's a brown dwarf, then it's going to be emitting predominantly in the red infrared regime as well. So things could still get dark, right? But we would have this sort of like very, very, very bright infrared source in the sky. Right, so that would feel a little bit different. There would be an impact on what it looks like visually, so it would be a bit brighter from that perspective, but not blazing like the sun is. It wouldn't be like that at all. In fact, that's one of the real challenges we have in figuring out about life in the universe, is whether or not the kind of energy that you get from a star like a brown dwarf has enough, how can I put it, good energy content that you can use to do things like chemistry and so on, and whether if you go down into the infrared spectrum where these would predominantly emit, whether there's enough of that high quality radiation down there, right? And so it may be that it's possible, but a lot of people are questioning whether in fact we can have life created around these red dwarf, brown dwarf stars.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's only a factor of 4, which gives you an idea of the size that Jupiter is, right? Because
yeah.
You know, because the sun is massive, right? So if it's only a factor of 4 to grow.
Okay, so I should put a qualifier on that. So brown dwarfs, they're not quite in the full nuclear chain, the same way that our sun is. They actually can only do a few really efficient nuclear reactions, so they're not quite burning the same way that something like the sun does.
Can a brown dwarf be the center of a solar system? Can it generate enough pull to keep planets in a line?
There's no reason why it couldn't be the central most massive object in a system. Yeah, that's more than possible. In fact, I just checked. I was out by a factor of 3. Right, it has to be 13 times more massive. Right, but to be a fully burning star the same way the sun is, it would need to be about 80 times more massive, right? But 13, there's no reason why you couldn't have a brown dwarf as the central object. You're in a strange situation, though, because then you've got to have a situation where the material that's forming the star, there's just not a lot of it, right? And so normally when you start forming solar systems and stars at the same time, because that's how everything happens, it's all happening coevally, as we say, you would have a lot of material to the point where you would be able to form a star, right? And so if you form a brown dwarf, then there's something going on that's limiting the amount of mass that's going into it.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Bobby to the program. Bobby, how are you?
Good. How about yourself, gentlemen?
Good. Your question for Dr. Thacker, please.
Yes. CERN recently did a quantum field simulation, and during the experiments, they noticed that there was feedback loops in the data, like the particles and whatever's going on there. I was just wondering what your opinion of that was.
So you're going to have to explain more about this because CERN does a lot of experiments. So can you give me a few more details?
It was like they were, geez, I should have read it a little more, but it was they were watching the feedback loops in the simulation, and they noticed that the simulation itself was predicting what they were trying to input into it.
Okay. So I'm guessing then that this is, if you're saying a simulation, you mean a computer simulation. Is that right?
Yes, I would assume. I was also going to ask you that question.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay. So I mean, you can do experiments where you simulate, for example, and this has been a big confusion. You can do experiments where you create particular conditions within a solid around the movement of a certain type of vibration within the solid that have parallels with black holes. And so people have talked about simulating quote unquote black holes that way. It's not the same thing, right? But there are analogies, and that's why they say it. So in terms of doing simulations of quantum systems, yeah, that's a really interesting area of science because we're starting to look more and more using quantum computers to do quantum simulation. Right. So if you can use quantum computers to simulate atoms and so on, then, or groups of atoms is where the really interesting part is, that would allow us to understand certain concepts of states of matter, for example. And so if CERN is doing this, my guess would be if they've got a feedback situation going on, I mean, that's going to be a property of whatever particular equations they're trying to solve. And so there's no reason why, if you're doing a simulation, you can't create really quite complex systems and then have feedback come out of those as a natural response.
Oh, okay, interesting. It was almost like they knew, like the simulation that they created knew what they were going to input before, and it was just kind of curious to me how they all do that. Yeah.
Okay, that's a little bit surprising to me, and I'd like to know more about that, so maybe I've got some homework to do. But certainly feedback is always a possibility in these kind of models. Again, it depends upon the equations themselves more than anything.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Danny to the program. Danny, how are you?
Doing good, Dan. How about yourself?
I'm good, sir. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Yeah. Hey, Rob. My question's in regards to that Canso launch pad, the commercial launch pad. I'm just wondering if is there any updates on that, or like a timeline, or what it can be used for?
Well, so there has been the big announcement by the federal government that they're putting $200 million into a Canadian launch facility. And that's probably the biggest news I think we've heard in a while. The question is then going to be, where is that money going to go? Because it's not only Canso. There is a project to actually build a launch facility in Newfoundland as well. The idea is very similar. You can launch and go south from Newfoundland the same way that you can launch and go south from Canso as well. So I think that's probably the biggest news I've heard recently about the situation there. So we'll see how things play out over the next few months, I guess.
You know if they're hiring?
I haven't heard that much about that. I mean, MLS does have its own website. I'm sure you can go and look at that. So, yeah.
All right. Would you put a good word in for me? Or?
For sure, Danny. You're at the top of the list, my friend.
Steve, I've met Steve Mattia, but Steve is not going to listen to me.
All right, Danny.
Okay.
Appreciate it, man. 902-405-6000. You got to shoot your shot, right? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-802-5555.
So actually, that's a really interesting point because initially, when they were looking at using Ukrainian rockets, right, people were saying, well, you know, if they have to bring the launch crew over here from the Ukraine, then there's not going to be that much requirement for people around here to do the job, right? And so now they're looking at having a different situation and not using rockets from Ukraine. Maybe they will have their own launch team. But the challenge with that is the launch team has to understand the rocket. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work at the end of the day. I'm presuming that different rocket launchers have their own launch teams because they know the technology, right? It's pretty difficult to go from
But I
one to
imagine
the
if
other.
it becomes a busy, we had them on the air, and they, their intention is to become quite a busy place, that I would imagine outside of the actual launch vehicle itself, there would certainly be work up there.
So there's definitely going to be work for anyone who's doing sort of like the meat and potatoes of keeping buildings going. Obviously, that's going to have to be done by people who are local to the area, but that's not going to be a lot of people, right? And so some people have said, and I'm not going to be that cynical, but I can understand where it's coming from, and said, like, well, the only people locals are going to be employed is like security and things like that. And the biggest spin-off for the locals is going to be actually tourism, right? People going up there to watch the launch. I mean, I'd pay to go up there and watch the launch. I mean, I want to see it once, for sure.
There you go. He'll be on his lawn chair at the next one. We're going to take another break. Science Files continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. I might be right beside you, Rob. We're back in a minute. All right, welcome back. Science Files continues. He's Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, here to answer your science questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. To the email bag, Dr. Rob. This one comes to us from Paul, and he writes, why is the ocean water salt water when all the water going in is fresh water from rain and brooks and lakes and those kind of things?
So I think what you got to remember is, like, yes, it's fresh water when it starts raining and things like that. But as soon as it's hitting the land, right, it's going to start absorbing whatever minerals and so on that can be absorbed and create a saltier water. So all of that runoff is actually taking things with it. I mean, this is something actually my partner has studied in the context of algal blooms, right? That when you have rain going down onto farmland, right, what happens? You get runoff, and of course you get fertilizers in that runoff as well. Right, so it's the same thing happening whenever you have water coming down as rain, landing on the ground. It's going to basically start absorbing whatever it can in terms of mineral content and so on. And not only that, you've also got open fractures on the seafloor that are emitting things as well, right? So all of that, the water, it's funny to kind of point it out, but I mean, water is sitting on top of something, right? And that's the key thing. It always sits on top of something, right? And so that connection alone is going to draw in salts.
Unless it's in our swimming pool in space. It just floats around and does everything it does.
Fair point. Yeah, okay.
It's interesting, though, and because, I mean, if you are at the mouth of a river, right, at the end of the run of all of that stuff, and you taste the water, for the most part, it's going to be fresh, right?
Yeah, it's
going to have some backwash from the ocean.
Yeah, it's going to be fresher. Yeah.
But the water is so salty in the ocean that it just absorbs all that, right? And,
I mean,
all of these factors add to it.
So what you've got to remember is the ocean has been around for billions of years, right? And so that water that you have in your river has been around for probably not very long in comparison, right? And so there is a big difference in the age of the water, as it were.
Make me want to go fishing. 902-4. Well, think of
you
rivers.
can do both. You can go sea fishing and
you were
river
talking
fishing.
about those algae blooms and the fertilizers and how tough those are on particularly on salmon and trout streams because it messes with the oxygen levels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the fish have a heck of a time to breathe.
So you completely can create a situation where there's no oxygen left in the stream. Yep.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Carl to the show. Carl, how are you?
Hey, guys. Wow, you guys are covering so many subjects. Well, on the last little point, when I was surfing in the Gulf of Mexico, in these areas that had a lot of silt in the water, all the mullet and the bait fish, their mouths are out breathing from the air because there's not enough oxygen in the water.
Yeah,
I witnessed it. That's crazy.
It is.
Anyway, so, yeah, and that's why I called was basically I think we need to explore our own planet and spend all this money they're spending in space. You already know how I feel about space. Unless you find a planet with breathable air, with great waves, I might go then, but otherwise forget it, right? So, but I feel like we should explore we don't even know our oceans fully. I mean, we know a lot of information about our oceans.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that at all. So it's very true that if you look at how many people have been to the bottom of the Earth's oceans, all the way down to the Marianas Trench, more people have been on the moon. Right. So that's when you point that out to people, like, oh yeah. But I mean, all of that said, I mean, the ocean, as we've just seen with Ocean Gate, is not a friendly place. In some ways, it's actually more dangerous than space, right?
Well, that and more reason to put money into it and explore it, because we don't know what's down there sometimes. I mean, who knows what?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree. You're totally right. And so one of the things that we don't know that would be really, really great to know, in fact, we're getting better data on this, or how many subterranean or subsea volcanoes there are, right? That's an active area of investigation that's really important right now.
Well, guys used to give me a hard time because I didn't go to Costa Rica or Barbados. I'm like, well, I know my own backyard. I surfed this whole continent. So, bam, did you do that? No. So there you go. No, explore your own backyard and know your backyard well before you go to Mars. And you know how I feel about going into space. Oh my gosh.
Well, look, I mean, I think everyone has heard me on the show say enough times that I can see the point of going to Mars for the exploration, but I can't see the point of going to the Mars just for the sake of being on Mars, because it's just not a fun place to be compared to the Earth. It's really not.
Now, that planet that Carl's talking about that has endless beaches and good waves and sunshine might be a good place to go. Carl, I appreciate it, my friend. Have a great one. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The engineering, you were talking about, the ocean being a more difficult place to explore than space because it's just the pressure, right?
Yeah, no, it's the pressure is extreme. Like, I mean, yes, we've designed things that will go down to the very bottom of the ocean and so on, but I mean, those things are basically very, very strongly reinforced metal cylinders, right? It's not something that's easily done. You have to have a lot of sort of like carefully monitored changes in pressures in these things as they go down as well. Right, so it's funny how a vacuum is an easier thing to engineering than a very, very high pressure space like the ocean is.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Tim to the show. Tim, how are you?
Hey, guys. Pretty good. I just have a question about, is it worthwhile making new pipelines or even new oil refineries?
Mm-hmm.
So when you get the oil out of the ground, you have your petrochemical industry. So you're still going to use a lot. So really, what percentage of the oil that we get is used in the petrochemical industry as compared to just burning it for our cars?
Okay, so I'm not going to be able to give you numbers on that off the top of my head. I'd have to do research, so I'm just going to be upfront about that. But at the end of the day, I can completely understand where your concern is coming from. Like, if we are in a situation where we know we have significant excess of CO2 in the atmosphere, and we seem to be accelerating the exploitation of various resources that we have, which is obviously not in agreement with what we're trying to do with the Paris Accords, there is a lot of people, and honestly, I'll say I'm one of them. I'm questioning, why are we going to be building new oil pipelines and so on, when in fact, if we want to get on the path to net zero, what we really, really need is actually more electrification and more grid infrastructure. So I've not held back about this discussion of having an east-west pipeline in Canada. I can't see the point of that, but I can see the point of having east-west electricity grid in Canada. That would be very valuable, right? And so that's my personal opinion on it. You will, of course, get different opinions from people who are involved in the industry and would obviously like to be able to make more money from it. But personally, I think it's fairly obvious where we're headed in terms of overall increases in temperature, and we're going to have to deal with that somehow.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate the question. Dr. Rob, I mean, this may be a philosophical question, but, we are eventually going to wean ourselves off of oil, mostly because it's finite, right? It's eventually going to run out. We're talking about it running out since the 80s, but...
we're definitely at peak oil. That's
right.
True, yes.
So, we're eventually going to have to just, by necessity, find another source of energy, right? To power the things and to make the plastics and do all the things that petrochemicals are doing now.
So one of the challenges is gasoline is still a good energy storage medium, right? And that's, I think, part of the reason why we're really struggling to get off it, right? It really is a very good way to store energy, right? And even something like hydrogen, which everyone talks about, is nowhere near as good as gasoline in terms of energy storage, right? So from that perspective, yeah, honestly, some people in the aviation industry are saying, I don't see how we're going to get off gasoline in a hurry, right? And so if you look at the aviation industry, I just did this, so I do have the numbers off the top of my head. That's about 1.7% of global emissions, right? And so you could, in a situation where aviation was something that you thought was really valuable and worth preserving, you could see scenarios in which, yeah, aviation doesn't actually wean itself off gasoline for a very long time. Right. But for most things, like road transport is the worst. That's up over 12%. Right. So that is one of the reasons why there is such a push for EVs. Right. Because if you can take 12% out of the global carbon emissions, I mean, wow, that's a significant chunk. Right. But again, you've still got another 88% left there that you have to do something about.
Right. And all of the arguments that we've heard about EVs and creating batteries and mining and lithium and all of that thing aside, but it's sometimes I think what gets lost in the argument is that oil is finite, and there isn't an endless supply. There's a lot of it, but it eventually is going to disappear, and we're going to have to figure out a new way to store energy, like in gasoline.
Well, I mean, so. This is the thing. I'm of the opinion that based upon a lot of very good research that's been done by many people around the world, we actually know plausible scenarios for getting off oil now, right? So all of the research that's been done around net zero scenarios, particularly Jesse Jenkins' group at Princeton and so on, have come up with rational scenarios for doing this in the space of 2 decades for advanced nations, right? You can do it. It's just the situation that you have to make a lot of investment in infrastructure to do it. And there's a lot of people who don't want to do that.
A topic for another day. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Rob. Appreciate it, sir.
Always a pleasure.
That is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for doing all she does each and every day, keeping this show in an orderly fashion. Not an easy thing to do. Get out there and enjoy what we have in Nova Scotia. People travel thousands of miles in those gassers, and they spend lots of money just to see what's in our backyard. So get out there and enjoy it. Until then, everybody, please be well, and remember to be kind to one another.